Alrighty, hello there guys! Today I'm going to show you how to make some peacock jars, so I hope you enjoy. If you have anything else you'd like to see me try, just comment down below and please hit subscribe. Alright, so for your first step you're going to want some sand from Dollarama, some white glue, a jar to paint, a cup to put your glue mixture into, and some basic paints. I got mine from Michael's. So for your first step, you're going to want to put some glue into the bottom of your cup. Don't need a whole lot in there. And now I'm putting in some basic light blue permanent along with some basic green. So I'm mixing the basic green and the permanent light blue in together. You're going to want to coat your jar with a very thin layer of this. You want it to make sure it goes on smooth and thin. If you don't put it on thin or evenly, you're going to have drips in your jar. You're going to want to give it about 4 hours to dry. You want it to be completely dry before you come back for the next step. If you let your glue mixture sit out for too long, you might have found that it's gotten really sticky. It's perfectly okay to add a little bit of water into it. Just be careful you don't add too much because you don't want it to be too wet either. Now I'm going to put 2 scoops of the blue sand into the cup and 2 scoops of the green. And then you're going to want to take out your glue mixture, and now I'm going to paint it along the bottom of my jar, along the edge that the jar has there. Now that I've painted the bottom of my jar with the glue mixture, I'm going to apply the sand. You want it to be nice and even, make sure that you've got everything covered, and just knock off the extra. Now I'm going to pour my sand back into the cup because I'm going to use that again later. And now I'm going to take the same glue mixture that I had at the beginning and adding some of the basic green and the basic blue to it to darken the color. I want a gradient on my jar, so I'm just going to start not quite covering all the way to the bottom and work my way up. Then I'm adding in more blue and more green to make it darker again, and then coating over that and blending it together. And again, just making it a little bit darker here, so that I get a nice even gradient on my jar. And there we have it all complete. It's looking good. I like the gradient so far. Now I have an extra glue mixture. I wasn't going to, but I decided I may as well use it. So I've added some more glue to it so that I can cover up another jar just to help it stretch a little further. Again, you want that layer to be nice and even. Alright, so I have applied the sand to the bottom of both of my jars now. I've waited about 4 hours for them to completely dry. On this next step, you're going to need some paintbrushes, you're going to want a piece of paper, some scissors, you're going to want some gesso. Now on my paper, I've sketched out a peacock. If you want to trace it, that's totally fine. But you're going to want to make sure that it's the right size to sit on your jar. Now it's just a matter of cutting out that peacock to create yourself a stencil that you're going to draw onto your jar. You can do this free-handed. I find that a stencil makes it look a lot better. Now that I've got my stencil cut, I'm going to just put that on my jar. I'm just using a common blue Bix pen. You want to make sure you don't press too hard because you could wreck your glue coat. Now I'm taking my gesso and I'm just coating that very first layer completely in white. You're going to want to make sure that that layer is completely dry before you add any other paint onto it. So both jars, I'm just completely covering that first layer in white. I'm freehanding my trees. If you feel more comfortable drying them on first, that's totally up to you. So in the process of putting on the white gesso here, I've actually knocked off a lot of the sand on my jar. Just a matter of fixing them up, fortunately, and I kept some extra sand to fill in the cracks. So I would strongly suggest that you do this step before you do the white paint. And so I'm applying my second coat of glue onto the sand to help it stick better. It's going to take the second coating about 4 hours to dry. The gesso will take more like half an hour to an hour. But you want to make sure that that glue is completely dry before you come back to your jar so that you can set it down without messing up your paint job later. Okay, so now we're back. The jar is completely dry. I've kept the inside of my peacock stencil because I'm going to actually cut it down a little bit more to get some of those interior lines on my peacock. I'm first going to just cut off the tail so that I know where to draw that tail line, and then do the same with the wing and trace that onto my jar just so that it's really easy to know exactly where those are supposed to be. Alright, so now we get to mix some paint. First up, I have some yellow ochre. I've got some basic brown and some basic red. So start by mixing the yellow and the brown together. I've put the red separate just because it's really easy to get too much red by accident. So I'm going to just mix that beside and then put a little bit of the red into my yellow-brown mixture. I also want to have a darker color of brown to do the main part of the tree. So I've added a little bit more brown and a little bit of the yellow mixture to that brown. And then lastly, I'm going to want an even darker layer for the outlines. So once you've got your paint mixed, then use your base color. These are water-based paints, so every time you're going to want to add in a few drops of water to help your paint go further. I decided my outline color actually isn't quite dark enough, so I've added a little bit of black to that. And now I'm outlining the outside of the tree with that. And once you've got that all done, you're going to want to put the yellow color, the yellow highlight color in the bark. Don't worry about making any of your brush strokes super even. If you have a little bit of texture, that's just going to make the tree look better in the end here. Alright, so for the base of your peacock, I've mixed a little bit of the light blue in with the basic green. And then I'm just going to paint that tail. I have it darker toward the outside and lighter as it travels up. For the body of the bird, I'm just doing some basic blue. And I'm going to put that on. I'm not going to put it on very evenly because you're going to want to have some texture again. Leave the wing because that's going to be painted differently. To help the base of the bird stand out, I've mixed some black and some blue together just to do some outlining with that. We're also going to need some white for some highlights later on, so I've got that ready in my tray. I've got quite a few different colors of blue here mixed up now. The blues I'm using for highlights in the bird's body, whereas the more green colors I'm using for the highlights in the tail. The wing of the peacock actually includes some brown. So here I have some Sahara gold. I'm going to mix that into my green mixture to form the base of the eye for the peacock tail. And then to help it pop, I've added a little bit of yellow as well. Now that's going to be the base of my peacock eyes, and I'm going to put quite generous dollops of paint on for that. It's a good idea to wait for it to dry before you add additional layers. I've added a little bit of yellow as well. Now I'm going to mix some colors for my leaves, so I've got the light blue again along with some basic green. I'm going to mix those together with a little bit of yellow to make the leaves on the trees. Again, I've mixed a darker and a lighter green together because I'm going to do a darker background to the leaf. And then I'm going to add a lighter layer on top just to help see it from farther away. For your flowers, I'm just mixing in some basic red and some basic white. I decided that the color is not quite as bright as I'm going for, so I actually got some Deco Art neon pink paint as well. And that just helps the flowers really brighten up, which is nice. You're also going to want to get yourself some gloss acrylic sealer to coat this jar. Right now it's not at all waterproof, and if you splash any liquid onto it, it's going to create spots in your jar. The acrylic sealer just helps give it a protective coating. For this final step, what I'm doing is I'm taking an X-acto knife and I'm actually cutting away a little bit of the glue mixture to form the bases of the leaves. What this is going to do is when I turn the light on, it's going to create the look of stars. So here's the completed jar. As you can see, it's got some lovely stars versus when it was just a dull blue shine before. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please just say so in the comments below.